According to a Gallup poll, 62% of Americans believe news in newspapers, TV, and radio is biased, and that 44% of it is inaccurate. It could be because Americans remember the mainstream media's rush to believe that weapons of mass destruction were in Iraq leading up to the invasion. Look at this, because in February of 2003, the Washington Post editorial board said that it was, quote, hard to imagine how anyone could doubt that Iraq possesses weapons of mass destruction. So fast forward to today, and 92% of Republicans think the media intentionally reports fake news. Alan, what is your take on the lack of trust in the media?
We, the consumers, are now just surfing. We skim. We're getting the news from our smartphone too often while we're driving, and depth has suffered as a result. So our perception of whether or not we're getting it straight is probably at risk too. Beginning in 1972, Gallup was asking, do the media report fully, fairly, and accurately? And right now, that number, 32%, is the lowest it has ever been. It's 14% among Republicans, and it was more than twice that a year ago. So things are definitely changing, but you can't just hang it on the messenger or the message itself. I think the consumer is also not giving it a fair shake.
What does that mean? The consumer's not giving what a fair shake?
Well, we don't read anymore.
Oh.
We listen. And now we have such a menu to choose from. There's a salad bar of news sources. So if you don't like what that channel's saying, you can always listen to this channel. And I am convinced that the consumer is more interested in affirmation than information. That's how they choose their news.
Lionel, you look like you have an issue with that. Do you agree?
I respectfully submit that there is now some of the best, most thorough, most incredibly fascinating levels of news reporting on a variety of subjects in blogs and online, and what used to be considered the gold standard, ABC, NBC, CNN, MSDNC, and all of those folks. That's what we're talking about. Newspapers, broadsheets, dead. Here in New York, the New York Daily News has been shuttered. I submit to you that online, every single day, I can plumb the depths of more stories and more issues, depending upon how deep I want to go, what I want to cover, and perhaps it's narrowcasting versus broadcasting. But I respectfully submit, the news today is better than it's ever been. You just have to know where to go.
But that's the question. How can we tell the difference between, I think, a lot of real, authentic fake news, because you have people that don't have to answer to an editorial board.
Amen.
You have people, exactly. So there's a lot of fake news out there on the internet, and I know this might shock you, but not everything on the internet's true. So how can the consumer tell what is true or not? And is this also kind of a race, thanks to smartphones and the citizen journalist, to go against the major networks, where the major networks have a checks and balances system?
Yeah, citizen journalist is also an oxymoron. Think about it. But you're right about the internet. You know, ever since I saw Forrest Gump shake hands with President Kennedy, I'm very discerning about what I believe. And according to Pew Research, many cannot tell news content from op-ed content. And Lionel and I, being brothers in the big extended talk radio family, learned something a long time ago, is that repetition works. And I hear from otherwise discerning, intelligent people that Democrats want open borders. And I will ask them, can you name one Democrat who has ever said that phrase? And that's when I get habba, 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 because they keep hearing this on Fox News over and over and over. A lot of Americans, Republicans, still think Barack Obama's birth certificate was a fake because of repetition.
Did I hear you say that the internet, or you used to call it the World Wide Web, doesn't have the checks and balances? What? Of what, the New York Times?
Lionel, let me pick up on the point you're trying to make right now. the checks and balances at the Washington Post has led us to believe that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction, and we launched an illegal war over it. That was ubiquitous in all your editorial-boarded newspapers and news agencies, except for McClatchy, right, which no one read, and so that didn't get out there. So I think people are right to not trust news organizations. Right now, they're lying to them again about what I just pointed out, the Russiagate investigation, where they're highlighting stuff that is bogus. They don't tell them that Manafort's actually being charged with crimes that have nothing to do with the Russiagate investigation. In fact, it has nothing to do with the Trump administration. It has to do with stuff that happened before the Trump. So, again, the news media is failing 100%. And if Facebook is now they're going to tell us what's real and what's not. Who better to tell us what's real and what's fake news than a guy who made $1 billion off a stolen idea for his friends?
But what do you prefer, to have somebody in their basement, their grandma's basement, that can't actually go out and get a job and decides to make up a story with a little bit of truth and even higher?
Hey, you know what? Scotty. I shop at Ralph's, and I walk past the National Enquirer every day. I don't mistake that for real news.
You are rehashing the kid in the parent's basement with the Cheeto dust? That's a blog to you? What you're saying might have been true years ago with Bat Baby and Hitler Still Alive. It's a new world right now. And by the way, when somebody comes along and says, I don't know where people got this idea about Barack Obama not having a real birth certificate, just like you're equating that with Elvis is alive, or my favorite, and some people don't believe that we landed on the moon. And then I ask, do you know why they doubt that? Well, no, I don't. Well, before you say something, and again, Holland, this isn't about you, but what I'm saying is there are people who believe these stories. Do you know how many times I've heard the word Vladimir Putin and the KGB? That was disbanded in '91. How about the NKVD or the OSS? This is on CBS, CNN, Jake Tapper, and all of these idiots. So it's everywhere. And how do you know what's fake? You just know.
Now, wait a minute. Now, Scotty suggests quite a caricature when she talks about that kid in the basement without the editor. You know who that kid is? Matt Drudge. This flunky couldn't get a job in radio, so he started a blog, and timing is everything, Monica Lewinsky.
Wait a minute. That's not a blog. Stop. That's not a blog.
Yeah,
that is a no. That's not a blog. He is basically citing, he is doing headline generation and referring you to other news stories, including the New York Times and others.
As was the Washington Post when they reported on what Colin Powell said when he held up that vial of who knows what at the UN. Garbage in, garbage out.
Okay, so what we're showing here is obviously since headlines sell, if it bleeds, it leads. Sensationalized journalism, the bigger the story that we can make it, the more clicks that it's going to get on it. So now, how do we bring it back down to earth, both whether you're talking online? Where is the accountability in making sure the things that are put out there? Will we ever be able to bring this elephant back into the zoo?
As a consumer, quantity equals quality. The more time you invest in knowing the detail of it, in knowing the person who is telling it to you, the better informed you'll be.
The mainstream media, swarming with falsehoods, riddled with censorship and under corporate control, is incapable of truly informing its audience. It can't rise above the corrupt motives of those calling the shots. When you awaken to this fact, turn to RT America, where we dare to question more.